can assume that if we don't see a whole host of new infections among that cohort of patients, that probably some immunity lingers. And in fact, the immune memory in T cells and B cells is probably allowing for people to have ongoing immunity. There may in fact be conferred immunity for as long as a year. We don't know that yet, but the good news is that among millions of patients who are post-infection and many with low antibody levels, we don't see, except with rare exception, any evidence that somebody becomes reinfected. This will take us time to understand, but it's my personal belief that if you have an infection and have developed immunity, you probably have immunologic memory in your T cells and B cells in the immune system, and can develop antibodies if you're exposed to the virus. We'll have to wait and see about that. We do know that if we look at all the number of people who are probably affected who haven't been tested, that the fatality rate is probably somewhere like 1% in the United States, not 5% as we might expect when we look at the tested patients. We've tested millions of patients here now, but we still don't have enough tests. In terms of the treatments that we're using, obviously oxygen is important, but we're learning that if we can avoid using mechanical ventilators, that's probably the way to go. We're using remdesivir, and it's felt to be benefit, but not a super benefit. We do see major benefits with dexamethasone, and it's a much cheaper agent to use for patients in which you see the IL-6 and the cytokine storm developing. So we're finding dexamethasone very cheap, very available, is actually a better medicine to use. We are using, for most patients with any sign of coagulopathy, we're using a combination of aspirin, dipyridamole at 50 milligrams QID, and heparin, all three together. In PCI cases, we're still doing a lot of taking people to the cath lab and doing angioplasty approach. But I think there really makes some sense to use thrombolytics because of the embolic phenomena in this disease. And I applaud those people that are using thrombolytics successfully because it may have benefits to other organ systems in the body. You mentioned hydrochloroquine, and we don't, for the hospitalized patients, we don't see a benefit. But it's still unknown as to whether there's a prevention benefit. So we can learn from India in this if you're seeing success with hydrochloroquine as a prevention benefit. We do see in the US that checking for vitamin D levels is important, and people who have low levels need to get supplements of vitamin D. Zinc may be valuable, and we're just looking at those prevention vaccine efforts. In terms of vaccines, we now have 2 vaccines in phase 3 trials, a Pfizer and a Moderna vaccine. These are RNA virus vaccines. And what we're doing is, while we're in phase 3 with these vaccines, they did look very favorable in phases 1 and 2, and safe enough. There are some symptoms, some side effects that have to be dealt with. Most people get some kind of a fever or achiness or muscle aches and so forth. So we'll have to explain that to people. But we're now producing those vaccines in up to 100 million doses because we're betting that they'll work. Now, we don't know if they're going to be 50% effective, 30% effective. We just don't know. So we really need to be thinking about new therapeutics as well as vaccines going forward. I will just say, and I could talk more if we get into questions and answers, Vivek, about the cardiovascular elements of this disease, which are very, very serious and very frequent. As many as 75% of serious patients have cardiovascular problems, a whole array of them, and we can talk more about them later if we have time. I want to emphasize that I think it's the public health measures that are going to be successful, and we as physicians need to lead the effort in making sure that the public health measures are in place. Masks, social distancing, contact tracing, frequent testing, having people, if they're going to aggregate in any which way, outdoors rather than indoors. Large gatherings need to be avoided. There's big questions about school openings. Here in the United States, we've started school openings, and in the states of Mississippi, Alabama, and several other, Georgia, we had to send hundreds of kids who tested positive in the first week of school. over 200 in each state. And a number of teachers have tested positive. So school opening is going to be controversial until we can do more testing. We need leadership. And I will say this, that in the US, we have invested, I think, something like $8 billion thus far in vaccine development, and more is coming. We need to be investing more in new testing methods. We cannot accept a PCR test, even though it's the best test, when it takes 6 to 12 hours, and in the US, it's taking 1 week to get the results. It's useless. We need to develop technologies for new tests where we can have results in minutes. And tests are being developed in Finland, in Israel for breath analysis tests, and we're testing some of those in the US right now. Their sensitivity isn't very good, but it's at least 85%, which is fairly good. We're building that technology, hoping that by September we'll have breath tests that can be 95% effective. We're also developing CRISPR tests using the development of sophisticated approaches to identify both the antigen and the antibody, presumably within 5 minutes, in terms of some of the models being tested right now. And these tests are very, very easy to produce, very inexpensive, and will be as cheap as, less than $5 US per test. So we not only do we need to develop vaccines, we need to develop new therapeutics besides Resdemivir, and some of that work is just beginning. And we most importantly need to develop rapid and effective and cost-effective testing to help us see where we are, so we can apply the public health measures to get this pandemic under control. It otherwise looks like it's going to be with us for years. So if we want to get our economy back in gear, we need to do those important things first. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. You stay back, and I would be happy to. So, Aman, if you allow me, I would request Dr. ML Gupta to speak for 4 minutes, and then I will take Aman, because you have to speak a little of finance. I know you have to go to another webinar, but I'll just request you to stay for 10-15 minutes. I'm requesting Dr. ML Gupta to speak a little, because this is going to be important, and he has been a very important researcher. Let me introduce Dr. ML Gupta. Has been a senior scientist and assistant director with ICMR, worked in King George Medical College, has more than 150 publications, and he was the first person to innovate or discover the anti-cancerous property of ashwagandha, which is being used. That was long back. So let me request Dr. ML Gupta to please go ahead with a brief description, and then we will have the later ministers will be joining a little later. Thank you, Dr. ML Gupta. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I am Dr. ML Gupta, age 85 years. I am an alumni of King George Medical College, Lucknow, of 1955 batch, passing MBBS examination 1960 and MD 1963. After that, I worked at the Department of Pharmacology, King George Medical College, Lucknow, and there, while working, I published, along with my other colleagues, more than 100 research papers in various journals of the world, published from most advanced countries such as America, Canada, Britain, Belgium, Holland, Germany, both East and West at that time, Japan, Philippines, and other countries. Now, 40 years ago, we provided a experiment evidence that ashwagandha, an indigenous plant known as Methania somnifera dunal, the root powder of this plant, has a property of protecting cancer induced by pre-treatment of animals with uricane, a chemical. The mechanism, we worked out that it has an immunostimulant effect in the body, and thus it might have been preventing it. At that time, we recommended that this drug should be clinically tried in all patients of cancer as who are undergoing chemotherapy, because in my clinical experience I have prescribed this plant powder and they have tolerated very well the chemotherapy after operation or radiotherapy. Now coming on to the COVID, I have suggested a drug, very old drug, a very safe drug, which might prevent not only transmission of COVID, but also enhance the present treatment efficacy, and by reducing the number of hospital days, by reducing the severity of the symptoms, by reducing the oxygen requirement of the patient, by reducing the ventilator requirement, by reducing the ICU stay, finally by reducing the mortality rate to a great extent, and finally by wiping out the COVID from the surface of the earth. However, it needs a clinical trial, and the drug as is most safe. Drug is one of the safest drugs available in modern medicine, and it's being used for the last 70-80 years without any serious side effects. However, it needs a clinical trial, and for that I have requested Government of India, Government of Uttar Pradesh, and Government of Maharashtra to kindly conduct a small clinical trial only in 60% to establish its efficacy so that the drug may be used clinically. In my opinion, the drug will be effective, very much effective, and very safe without any serious side effects. In the last 78 years, the drug has not done any serious side effects have been seen in any patient of the drug, although millions of patients have received this drug. But government should consider it seriously by conducting a short clinical trial of this drug. Is more effective and more safe than ivermectin, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this small repurposed medicine trial, which is still pending. It's a very unfortunate that despite 2-3 reminders, the Indian Council of Medical Research has not been able to give a go-through for such a innocuous, safe being used. So let us, I'll talk to ICMR and we'll see. To the people who are new to this meeting, Facebook Live, Dr. ML Gupta is my father, so I've been privileged to be under his guidance, and he has been a teacher also associated with ICMR in KGMC. He has taught most of the doctors who are working in Delhi, like Naresh Trian. I was very happy to see that once Naresh Trian, we met together, and he said he touched his feet, and also he's a very respected person. So this drug, which I will let you know later on, is very important, possibly for the future of curbing the medicine, because there is no as such clear-cut medicine which can really be. There is no Rambar as of now. Dr. Vijay Bang in Bombay, I'm watching you. So let me start with now coming on to the economical aspect of this webinar, and I'll request Mr. Aman Agarwal, who is the Director of Finance, Institute of Finance. He's a professor, and he will be speaking briefly because he is going to do another webinar. I'm thankful once again to him to accept this invitation on a very short notice. Aman, please go ahead for another 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Namaskar. It's a very honor to be at the forum of Vivek because, he has been holding these webinars on the issue of healthcare and economics and on various aspects. And it's very critical. And he's been bringing people from all across the globe in terms of educating all of us in this particular times of difficulty and trying to find ways of going forward. Now, the task which has been given to me is about the economy. Healthcare and economy has to go hand in hand. As you say, if you don't have a healthy mind or a healthy body, you cannot have prosperity going forward. So it's a question of looking at prosperity. How are we looking at prosperity, growth, and that has to entail healthcare. And I'm happy that he put healthcare. In fact, we organized a summit also on healthcare economics in July, on 25th of July. And that's where the economics aspect also plays a critical role, apart from the well-being of a person. But ultimately, if the well-being is not there, we don't see the economics going. We have been at the Indian Institute of Finance doing research with about 4 or 5 of us working on it for the last 6 months now, almost January beginning we began. And when I was first interviewed by a television on Corona in the first week of July, I then spoke to a large number of doctor friends of mine who are medical superintendents or heads of hospitals in the city of Delhi NCR, and wanted to understand what exactly Corona is. And many of them actually said that actually Corona has been there for about 3,000 years. It's a different form of Corona which we are seeing now, but it has been as a virus or whatever you want to call it for almost 3,000 years. So my question next was, if it was there for 3,000 years, what is stopping it to be there for the next 3,000 years? So what we are looking at, and that's what I told at various TV channels in the first and the second week of July itself, is that something which has been there for 3,000 years, what is going to stop it for next 3,000 years? So what we need to look at is life with Corona and not life beyond Corona per se. So we have to coexist with this particular element and see how can we match up with it. I must compliment and I must salute the medical fraternity, not only in India, but across the globe, who has actually been marching ahead. And even the governments who have been trying to put their foot front, whether it is a question of financing, providing healthcare facilities, imbibing new healthcare systems, trying to buy new systems, new instruments, providing the best possible facilities to doctors, even though whatever can be done is always less, but whatever they're trying to do is some bit. And apart from the fact that, given the fact that the healthcare system in India is majorly privately run, whether it is doctors, clinics, and so on and so forth, I think they have done a wonderful job in terms of trying to contain this particular problem within the specified zone, which doesn't make it actually a major pandemic. As many of my doctor colleagues say, that the ratio is fairly low as compared to some of the other diseases which are much larger. Now, the economics, as I said, when we are studying for the last 6 months, we found we only did not study pandemics. We have been trying to study large number of disasters which have taken place, whether it is natural disasters like tsunami or man-made disasters like bombing, World War I, World War II, and so on and so forth, and like trees burning in various countries in the United States and Australia and others, that what exactly happens when such kind of disasters happen, whether it is the pandemics, the 13, 14 major pandemics which have happened in the 3,000 years. Some of them actually, when we look at Google them out, we find that some of them actually were so severe that almost about 33 to 70% of the population of a city, including France and London, actually disappeared at a point of time because of those pandemics. There was one particular pandemic which actually led to full civilization, one particular full growth of civilization in a particular region disappear completely. There were inhabitants which came, brought that back, but in any case, it was a complete eradication of one civilization at one particular point of time. But we are here talking to each other, communicating each other, having cups of teas and coffees and sharing and smiling and, looking at how are we looking going forward, trying to make our move forward, take our ship through these troubled waters, marching ahead and moving forward very fast. Now, when we found this, when we're trying to study this, now I'm not a medical doctor per se, I'm an economist, I'm a financial professor. So our perspective is always from a finance and economic perspective, keeping social perspective in mind. And what we found was that most of these disasters, whether it was man-made disaster like the wars, or like dams or other disasters which took place because of non-creation of dams also, tsunamis and so on and so forth, and even these pandemics, we found that within a span of 6 months to a year, when situation came under control, I would not say eradication, but when situation was brought under control, which most doctors say the peak going down. Many countries have seen some peaks, some still are not clear whether it is a peak or not, like China said in March itself that they have seen the peak, but then again there was an eruption of the whole scenario going up. So whenever the peak actually starts going down, settling down, is when we start calculating those 6 months to about 9 months. We have seen various economies in a span of about 2,000 to 3,000 years have actually rebounded back very fast. So the login period, the lag period, as would say, is between 6 months to a year. And many people ask me, why do you say so? Because large number of people, all of us, we live in normal situations. Whatever we may call it, a new normal or whatever, we have something called the germ diffusion process. Like when you throw a pebble in a pond or a small water pond or somewhere, there are ripples created. Now those ripples settle down. Similarly in the sea, the ripples get created, they settle down when they come to. So the time lag which takes to settle down is what we call the lag period which is there. And this particular period is something where we are having the fear factor, others which are contributing to us not to contribute or go out or do spending, or maybe making consumer spending or doing our normal activity. But within a span of about 6 months to 9 months, we find most of these activities are rebounded back. And since it's more like a refresh start which takes place, like when we boot a computer system, it's a refresh which is there. So we are now going to see new economic frameworks, new economic systems which are coming up. Financial markets have been going on. Hospitals have been going on. Pharmaceutical companies have been going on. In fact, some of them have been actually at a double pace as against the others. If you look at the gold and the silver market, they have been boosting up extensively. Oil had a sluggishness, but then they have, again, energy markets are boosting up. So it is not that there is a standstill. In a war, when there's a bomb expected to fall, we do not know whether we'll survive the next moment because there's some bomb which may fall on us. And many countries, even today, have this problem, whether it is because of civil war or otherwise, still having this problem going on. Imagine the life certainty is very low, but still life goes on there. So, my dear friends, my important message to you all is, please do not get worried about the economic aspect. There is already a large chunk of money which has been flushed in by various governments, including India. That will certainly have a rebounding impact. That will have an inflationary impact, actually, which will be fairly high. But given the fact that we're in a deflationary situation, meaning thereby that something which I can buy for 100 rupees today is going to cost me less tomorrow, because I'm going to, the deflation is there. There's no inflation because the products, some of the products are lying. Then there will be a rebuild of inflation. That's where the food products, oil prices, other things go up. And that's where the inflation will rebound back because of the seigniorage money or the fiscal deficit financing which the government, whether it is government of India or other governments which are going to do for all these bailout packages which have been given for COVID, will set in. And the lag period there is about 4 months, 6 months again. So we are going to see that happen another month or two now. So the inflation will rebound. But since we are quite negative in terms of inflation, that inflation rebound will not have major impact. It will be a short-lived inflation if the government and the central banks within the country and even outside are able to control it. So my suggestion only, and I understand there are about 2, 3, 4 minutes for me more. So my suggestion is, please take care of your health, well-being. Do not be afraid of economic scenarios. Things will rebound back. Government is trying to do all possible mechanisms, means to actually go forward in terms of creating frameworks for building it on and making the economy rebound. I am fairly confident about it. And for India itself, if I can say, we have roughly about $500 billion as foreign exchange reserves. You know, I was interviewed on UK about 6, 7 years back on Delhi Doordarshan. And when I was studying that, when the Prime Minister was coming at that time, I was interviewed. When I studied the UK economy, it was about 2.3 or 2.4 trillion, the same what we are today, dollar economy at that time. And that time, their total reserves were $100 billion. Today, we have $500 billion of reserves, apart from various other factors which are not taken into consideration, like the gold reserve which the people of this country have, which is a safety buffer. Secondly, the cash economy which exists even today in the rural India, which is a huge buffer for any kind of an uncertainty which takes place. Although demonetization did reduce a large part of it, but still you will see a huge chunk of that economy still existing, because almost to the tune of 4 times of the cash which was there in the economy when demonetization was done has already been pumped in. So we have those safety buffers, we have those safety structures. The economy is in good hands. The frameworks are strong. The MSME segment is doing well. We are now trying to cash in all those Chinese, all those companies or countries which are moving out of China and trying to get them in India. We have seen some shift of business as well. We have an FDI flow of almost about 5.5 billion to 6 billion every month in this country. And that has been constant despite the fact that we are seeing COVID. So, you know, that is not small amount which is coming in for a country like India. And this is coming in new sectors, new emerging. So new normals would be new markets which will be rising, new job opportunities, new challenges which are going to be seen as I see as opportunity. And this is where I see growth which will rebound back. People have tendencies to revert back to their normal course of life very fast. It is not such a long period that people will forget how to go out to parks, to meet with people. We are a social human being, we are social animals. And as a result, we would see that happen soon, and the economy will ultimately rebound back. Indian economy, traditionally, even after independence, even when the rupee was 2 rupees for $1, today we are around 75 rupees for $1, which is quite weak. But even at that time, till today, we have had a parallel economy which is almost in tune of the normal economy. And even today, largely a large part of the Indian economy is still having that parallel economic component, which actually acts as a buffer. And there are a large number of cases when we saw the 1995 nuclear test done, and then almost about 50,000 people had been sent back by the United States, cancelling their visas into India, not much effect in the economy. Similarly, when the South Asian crisis took place in 97, 98, we saw again almost about 200,000 people turning back into India for Asia. Again, no major impact on economy. We saw the world financial crisis in 2007, 8, which has a major impact on the financial imbalance. Yes, there were large NPAs which were created, but then again, immediately for a long period, there was no major debacle on the human mankind or the livelihood of people as such. And so from that perspective, my dear friends, this is not something which is going to de-course the economy or the economic framework of India, or even large part of the world as a matter of fact. And I would say many countries are trying to do good works. There are always some pitfalls. There's always some problems which come up. But I think given the faith, the structure which we have in this country for our Prime Minister, our government,
and Aman, we are again short of time. Actually, Zoom is showing down.
Yeah, I was ending it
10
now.
minutes left. Sorry for that,
Yes.
because I wanted.
No, I was ending it now. Thank you.
Everybody now has got 3 minutes because we have limited time. So we don't want to do it again. Anshu, please summarize, because he's very positive about this economy. Just summarize your thought process quickly, because then Vijay Bang will speak and then we'll take questions with Dr. Ashokan talking to him. Just 3 minutes, please. We have 10 minutes left only.
Hanji, sure. So just, I think putting some numbers to what Professor Agarwal mentioned, we have seen during this time that the top billionaires globally have seen their net worth increase by $500 billion within this pandemic. The global pharma market that was about $934.8 billion in 2017 will reach about $1,170 billion US in 2021. The consumer spending in global pharma is going to be 1.5 trillion US dollars by 2023. So Indian pharmaceuticals, healthcare services, and medical equipment companies are swimming in a sea of immense possibilities, and that is worth multi-trillion dollars, since we have the global economy open to work with us, and apart from that, we have such a increasing domestic demand as well, and plus we've always lived with a lot of opportunities in low cost production, with healthcare professionals that are remarkably talented and in great numbers in our country, and plus the research and development has been more efficient lately overall in this field. Apart from all of this, we now are at a point which was not any time before this, is that we have a leading competitive advantage in terms of exports. Since the countries which were leading in exports are less favored, and Indians are more favored in a lot of sectors, including healthcare. And on top of that, I think there hasn't been a more supportive government coming up with a very dynamic, government stimulus packages, which are ever changing and, reciprocative to the current developments. So considering all of the situation, we, I think as a nation of millions of small businesses, we need to understand that if we don't capitalize on this opportunity this year or in the next financial year, we may be missing out the opportunity of a lifetime. And the best way I think, I could support in that endeavor is to give you, I think, an overview of certain segments which may be unique and upcoming, and it has a great potential, so number one is end-to-end drug manufacturing. We have been manufacturing, but end-to-end aspect has been missing. the supply chain logistics of the pharmaceutical manufacturing and distribution has a lot of immense potential. The export of healthcare professionals to foreign countries, who are after this pandemic are going to increase their the public spending in which will be worth again several billions of dollars. There needs to be an intervention of tech-enabled healthcare services, which can enable the consumers to be treated at home or remote locations. Diagnosis, which will also help the healthcare services to maintain a consistent flow of customers, in case of any other pandemic that may arise. So diagnosis and treatment, which is tech-enabled and it can be operated remotely, is the future. Apart from that, I think by and large, so far, a lot of Indian companies have not been able to capitalize on this immense opportunity that rest of the HNIs have been making money in the market. Is I think number one, because of the process, the lack of process improvement. So we need to understand, that when such situations arise, if the business has strong processes in place, it is easy to pivot, it's easy to innovate, it's easy to mitigate the risks that, these pandemics or any global crisis can
Anshu, without, I think what we'll do, we have 3 speakers more. If it got disconnected, we'll do the same way, we'll get reconnected by the same link. So you can continue. If it disconnected, Dr. Vijay Bang and Dr. Ashokan, and then we'll have some discussion with the American friend regarding the new things which are coming up. So I think that if it gets disconnected, please try to reconnect after the 3 minutes only. I think, Jack, you'll realize that again, this is a 40 minutes deadline. So I think within 1 minute, get disconnected. And a lot of things are to come up. So we'll have 20 minutes again. So what we'll do, we'll reconnect with the same. And it's now 3 minutes still left. So it's showing. So Anshu, you can continue. But if it gets disconnected, we'll reconnect with the same link after 3 minutes of gap.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Anshu, continue. Anshu, please continue. Rather than giving people trying to struggle for the time, let us reconnect again. So Anshu, please continue.
Anji. So I think what I'm trying to highlight is that the core business functions also need to be taken care of by the small businesses in India in general, and in the healthcare sector and pharmaceutical and medical equipment, to make sure that not only you're focusing on the end product or getting the clients acquired to buy your product, but you need to make sure that your business functions are in place so that you can grow the business and capitalize on the market share. And to do that, we need systematic operating procedures in place. We need automation of processes. Where the world is moving towards is incorporation of deep technology, which is robotic automation, AI, and blockchain within the business functions also. How can these market intelligence information help us make more informed business decisions? What are the healthcare services doing across the world, which are making profits, and why is a particular company not been able to make a profit? So all of this information can be gathered through business intelligence softwares, and it helps, which is why it helps the largest enterprises to make quick decisions when such crisis occurs. And the SOPs also need to be, and specifically in I think in healthcare sector, which is so sensitive and integral for our society, we need to get it aligned with disaster management, so that we know that in case something of this nature happens in future, we are prepared to counter that. So I think if we start taking care of these aspects, we can have multiple billionaires, in this country after the current pandemic.
To you is that you feel that the economy is there is, although Aman said that the economy will boom back, because we have 1 minute, so you can answer this question before you leave, and then we'll reconnect it. So,
Sure.
I mean, there is no doubt that there has been major impact on the healthcare economy, especially. Not because we know about healthcare more than other things. So you'll
Sure.
feel that everything will be all right soon.
I think it is already looking good. In terms of, like, for example, the
How much is
companies.
the GDP loss? I mean, in terms of loss to the country, do you have any figure for Indian loss to cost to the India economy? How much is the actual loss?
Yes, so in terms of the healthcare sector, in the previous quarter, there was a loss. There was predicted to be a loss between 12,000 to 24,000 crores in healthcare sector.
So I have just, I think I'll just again repeat that everybody should log in again with the same ID as soon as it gets